Today we're going to make a human being. It's really the first project we do in 4th grade. So in a previous lesson, when we were explaining about different kinds of wood and species to use, I split this piece off of about a 9-inch chunk of cedar. So this is what we're going to begin with. After we have gotten this wood out of a log, the children are feeling pretty interested in it now. They've heard a story about where it came from. Little by little, we're going to carve it down until it becomes about this size. Now, we want it bigger than this because there's still a lot more to have to come off, but this is more or less where we're aiming at the end, about this size. Okay. Now, this particular piece wants to split right there. And if I'm able to really get it happening, I could probably make it happen right in front of you guys. There, look at that. Because this wood has this very long, straight grain, it really splits easily, as you saw in the earlier video. So I just now spotted a place where it wants to split. And I was able to use the knife to put in that crack where it wants to split and actually just split it off because it has this nice long grain. And I'll continue with the process of shaving the sides down, go from the bottom towards the middle, and flip it over when I want to do the other side. And I'm going to keep doing that now. I see another place where it wants to split. I see it right there. So I'm going to see if I can urge it along, just using the knife. Now the kids probably don't have enough strength in their hand to do this. So you may have to help them, or you may need to get a hatchet or an axe and just make that splitting process that much easier. Okay, we just keep working on these corners. And this process for the children will probably take about 4 or 5 classes, maybe more, maybe 6 classes before they get a chance for it to be more of a cylinder shape. Now, trying to carve the way I'm carving, this is what an adult should be carving right here. Okay? We have a lot of strength in our arms and determination, but a child, you want them to work slowly and really master the control of the knife and just get little pieces. It takes a long time to make a human being for the 4th graders. They don't want to rush. This needs to be a slow process for them. But because I'm trying to show you the process, you adults, I'm going a little bit faster with more force than a child would. Now that we have the cylindrical shape, I'm going to determine what's going to be a top or bottom. So in this case, I'm going to make this the top, and this will be the bottom. So I need to make the top smaller and thinner because that's where the head's going to be. So I keep shaving around and around from about this far up and going to make that head round. It takes a little while for me to do it, and it takes a lot longer for a child to do it. But this is the process that you need to show them after you learned how to do it. The kids will keep asking you, "Teacher, how much more do I need to do?" And you say more. More, more, more. Now, as you see, it's getting smaller and smaller towards the top. So keep doing that process. Okay. So now we're going to start rounding the top. Even though the head's not to the right size yet, we can start getting that rounded shape. Now, you can do that with the knife. A lot of it by working on this edge like this. Slowly working around the edge. Now, you could go ahead and skip and go ahead to the rasp. There it is. And start using the rasp like this. You're working on that same corner that you're just carving. Now you could use it like this. You can use it like this. There, see, it's getting rounder and rounder, like the top of your head. And you might even, at this point, have a child say, "Mr. Bryant, what are we making?" And I usually say, "Well, you'll see." And then at some point, pretty soon, they're going to look at it and think, "Hey, Mr. Bryant, are we making human beings?" So yes, you are. And so that's the process. So the next step is to determine where the neck is going to be. Now, generally, the human being, the head is about twice the size of the neck. But you don't want to make the neck too small. So you have to go slowly. So in this example, you can see me transitioning from a big head to a smaller neck. And that's what I'm going to do on this one here. So I'm going to say that the neck is going to be about twice as long, or the head's going to be twice as long as the neck. So the first thing I do is I kind of mark where I'm going to be. Now, one technique is to take the knife and to very carefully cut a V that goes all the way around the whole process, the whole project, rather. Okay? Now, got to be careful when you're cutting this way. You don't want to push this way. You want to push this way, down. If you push this way, it could split the wood and come over and cut. You don't want to cut the children. They don't want to get cut. You don't want them to get cut. And you finally get back to the original spot, and that will become the neck. Now, you could have hair with a face. So the hair would be very big compared to the head. So in this case, I think I'm going to make a girl, and she's going to have hair. Okay? So carefully cut the neck a little bit deeper. You need to have it so that you can see where the shoulders are. Now, sometimes you can use a rasp for this. Okay, so now we look at this human being starting to form, and this will be the front, and this will be the back. You know, most of my projects that I choose for my students are based on something in their curriculum that they're getting in that grade. For fourth grade, what I chose to do is to look at the Waldorf curriculum and look at all the possibilities, and one of the things I came up with is in the fourth grade, there's the man and animal block. So that's pretty simple. You have them make an upright human being to help reinforce that human aspect of that curriculum, the man and animal block. And then for the second project, I have them make an animal. So you can see that this wood had a little bit of a dip right here. So that's going to become a place where the arms can slightly wrap around. So these arms are going to come around like that and like that. And the hands will be here. So you can see what we're going to do next. I found in my many years of teaching this that doing this next step of defining the arms using a knife produces a lot of little cuts and injuries. And the way you would do it is you would use the tip of the knife to kind of follow that outline, and then you use the side of the knife to kind of peel the material away. But I find that a lot of little cuts happen with the kids. So I'm going to use the woodpecker knives because I think they're safer for this particular process here. There we go. There we go. So I'm going to use the gouge, straight gouge, and the flat chisel. So in the beginning, I'm going to use the flat chisel. I'm going to clear away a spot. And you can just wiggle it back and forth like that, pushing it in. Then you're going to come back with the gouge, and you're going to hollow it out. So I got that side. Now I'll do this side. Now, this might be a good time to try out your clamp. And I'm going to unloosen it. Okay, I'm going to open that up. We're going to put this person in here like this. You make it nice and tight. There. Now, the children don't have to have their hands near the project. So again, here's the flat chisel. Put it in there and wiggle it back and forth, and your hand's way back here safe. You could even use a little bit of a mallet. Not a big one like this, but a very small mallet. All right, now, you can see what we got going here. Now I'm going to use this one. Now, at this point, you can continue that process to make it smoother and smoother. The face is going to be here. Little girl's face. And that's what we're going to end up with. So here we are, hello, back in the wood shop. I began this project here at my house and ran out of time. It got dark, so now we decided to come in here and we're going to finish this up in here. So at this point, they can use this tool to establish where the arm is going to be, and they can simply wiggle their tool back and forth like this right along where that arm is going to be. Okay, and then come back with the gouge. So the straight one's a chisel. The curved one is a gouge. And I teach the children the proper names of all the tools. They often will say, that little curvy thing, or they know that I bought these tools in China and I brought them back with me, and they say, oh, those Chinese tools. No, tell me the right name, the proper name. Okay. And then they'll say, the woodcut knife set, because it says it on the package. That's fine. We can go with that. So now they're using the gouge to kind of, to make this wood come away from the arm, but they leave the arm. And this is another place where you need to really check the children, make sure that they're not carving the arm. Often I'll get students, if I'm not watching, they'll be carving the arm away. So now they have this hollow spot where the arm should be. So, and they can do that, and they will do it if you're not watching them. So keep an eye on them. Make sure that they're holding their project in a safe way. Okay? You know, they're not holding it like this. I can't tell you how many kids have stabbed themselves when they hold it like that. But they will carve in an unsafe way. So your job as a teacher is to always make sure that they're staying safe at all times. Well, you see that, how things slip? So if my hand had been underneath it, it would have stabbed me. All right, maybe I need to approach it from a different direction. There we go. So you always encourage the children to move the wood around so that they're always working in the safest way possible. Okay, so now I'll put this down, I'll get the gouge going again, and I'll start carving away what's not arm. Okay. So I think you could probably see that. The shadows, it's good to have shadows in your workshop. The kind of lighting we have in this workshop are all fluorescent, and they don't really throw a good shadow. So now we have all these gouge marks. You can see the little gouging marks there. So what I do typically is I'll teach the children how to come back and using the knife, you know, from whichever direction works best, and they'll have to try it 3 or 4 times until they can get it smoothed out. And I have them use the knife to try to smooth out that wood as best as possible. And the more smooth it is, the less sandpaper they have to use, or the less time they have to spend with the sandpaper. All right, and now we've got 2 arms pretty well defined here. The neck is, you know, can go in deeper, which I'll do that next. I drew a little mark on this where you can see that there's going to be a face, but it's not going to have eyes, it's not going to have a mouth or nose, just an outline of the face. And this will be a girl because of the hairstyle. Now, the boys, you might have them just carve it round like this. The girls, you might want to have a little face on it. Okay, I'm making the neck a little bit deeper now. Okay, all the way around it. It may take them a month of classes, you know, of once a week for 2 hours a week to get to this point. Might take them 2 months. Some children will be further along. Some will be further behind. So I'm going to go ahead and use the same chisel tool to kind of outline where that face is going to be. Okay, even around the curve, I'm still using the chisel tool. And the children will say, "Oh, Mr. Bryant, can't I use a hammer on it?" You know, like something like that. I said, "No, this is very soft wood. You don't need to use a hammer." But sometimes they will use a little mallet or a piece of wood. Now, I'm going to go ahead and take a small amount off. The reason I come back with this knife, of course, is to save time on the sanding process. But then again, some kids prefer sanding. You know, I asked them, what thing were you feel most successful about? And some children will say, "Oh, I felt most successful using the sandpaper." Other children say, "I felt most successful using the knife." So some kids like carving, some kids don't like carving. Some kids like sanding, some kids don't like sanding. I find that the cholerics don't like sanding much because it takes them a long time and it's tedious work. So you get about to this point here, and you can see that there's some places that are going to have to come down. So basically there's a bit of a lump right in here that I'm going to take off. Okay, because it doesn't look quite natural. It looks like the back has kind of got a bump on it. So I'm going to take that down. There we go. So that lump is more or less off. I see a little bit more of something here. Now, some children, they just can't do it. So you got to figure another way out. So the other tools, sometimes I'll bring a rasp out and I'll let the children use the rasp. The ones that can't quite handle the knife, or if they're holding the knife very dangerously over and over and over again, then I'll have them use the rasp, because the rasp, while you can cut yourself with a rasp, it's not something that you're going to have to go to the hospital for. With a knife, you cut yourself wrong with a knife, and you definitely may need to go to the hospital to have some sewing done on your hand. And we don't want that. So you got to keep an eye on kids. I have taken the knife away from kids before, simply because that child was incapable of working with the knife safely. So I take it away and I said, okay, you're going to use the rasp. And you can use different size rasps to do this, all this work, but preferably they're using a knife. Okay, so now we've got the sandpaper. We can start sanding all the different parts of the project, and this can take a very long time for the students, but eventually they'll get it done. Now this particular wood is quite soft. It sands very nicely, so just a little bit of sanding, and now you've got a nice surface here. And I show them the different techniques of how to sand. They don't want to sand too much of the arm off because that will make it disappear. I show them how to fold the sandpaper, how to bend it in such a way that it'll get in there and get the work done that they want to get done. And this is always a harder place to sand, around the arms, on the chest. But usually by about 3 months into doing this project, it'll be done. So if they start in September, usually by the end of December, they're finished, and it becomes something that the family keeps for many, many years. I know some families that have whole shelf in their living room with all the projects that their children have made in woodworking. It's kind of nice. I like that. And of course, now in the classroom, when the children are working, this is a time where they're talking. Now they don't have to really concentrate so much that they're going to get stabbed if they lose their concentration. So now they're talking, and often I'll look and they'll be working, and then they'll stop and they'll talk. Talking about what they're going to do on the weekend, or what they did last weekend, or what and then I have to remind them it's okay to talk, but you need to keep your hands moving while you're talking. And then they'll keep working, and oh, sorry, Mr. Bryant. And then I'll look back again, and they're talking, and they're not working again. So eventually I'll have to tell the child, look, if you're going to be talking and not working, then I'm going to put you at a different table so you won't talk at all. Well, usually that solves the problem, and the children will keep working while they're talking. Okay, we're making progress, as you see. The object is to get all of these little saw marks off of it. I mean, little knife marks. So, and I show them to go round and round, or back and forth, or long ways. And eventually they get those little marks off. Okay. The children will always ask me over and over again, is it sanded enough? Am I finished sanding? And I usually say no, because I want every little tiny blemish to be gone before I give them the approval to go ahead and oil it. And often what will happen is that they'll be so impatient that eventually I'll say, okay, you can oil it, but if we see any scratches or any blemishes after you've oiled it, you have to go back and keep sanding. Okay, is what they'll say. And then sure enough, we'll oil it, and sure enough, they'll show big scratches that they missed or they didn't see, but the oil will bring out those little blemishes really fast. And so they go back to sanding again. So I think we're at a point now where we can go ahead and oil this. And even though I do see a few blemishes here, I want to point that out so that you can see the blemishes once the sanding is done. So I always have them doing the oiling outside because I don't want too much overspray on my tables, although I do oil these tables periodically. But whenever they're working on the oiling, I have them work over a board, but it helps to protect the tables if you're working indoors, and it won't hurt the woodworking board. So the first thing I do is I use this orange oil. It's got a very nice, fragrant kind of orange smell to it. It has some pure natural orange oil in it. However, this is also used with, this type of oil has a petroleum base. And a lot of people don't like to use anything that has petroleum in it. So you could actually use a plant-based oil. You could use lavender oil. You could use olive oil, although the olive oil won't give you this kind of smell that this will give you. You can use cooking oil, although cooking oil tends to go rancid and it'll start smelling bad. You could melt oil and beeswax together and apply it. That's a good way of finishing these projects. But in this case, what I'm going to use is just the stuff that I always use here, this orange oil. Try it out, see if you like it. But again, it's made with petroleum distillate, and so it's not non-toxic. If a kid was to put it in their mouth, probably would not be a good thing to use. Okay, so I'm going to hold it here. Now you can see how the grain in this red cedar really comes out when it gets oiled. It's quite beautiful wood. I think it's definitely more beautiful than Duamu, but it's a little more difficult to carve because of the long grain in this wood. Okay, I'm going to hold it here. And then even the bottom I'm going to cover. And I want to look for any parts that have dried out like this. Oh, look, top of the head. So I'll have to put a little shot of this stuff on the top of the head. All right, I think we're about to a point where I can show it to you. So this is exactly what I wanted. I wanted to show you the places that I hurried through. I think you can see them. These areas around the arm and the hands, I could have done more work sanding. You can see them. They kind of stand out, the little blemishes. So and behind the arm, do you see this area in here? You can see those little blemishes. Sometimes in the neck area, like on the hair, the hairline here. You know, that could have gotten more sanding on it because you can actually see where the knife was cutting into it. Around the face, that could have taken quite a bit more time on the sanding. So I wanted to point that out so that you can never sand it too much unless it erases the arm or erases something off of it by sanding too much. But sanding a lot is one of the things about woodworking. Now you want to look real close and look for any parts that are dry that maybe didn't get enough oil. I see a couple spots around the neck, so I'm going to go ahead and give it a little bit more oil around there. There's some parts of it will absorb the oil faster than other parts. So don't be afraid to oil it several times. It just keeps absorbing into the wood, and it just makes it a little bit darker and more beautiful, I think. Okay, so that's about it. I think we're done with this human being. Now, often what will happen is that it won't stand up straight up and down. So you may have to carve a little bit off the bottom or cut a little bit off the bottom so it's not leaning too far. But then again, like this one's leaning back. Too much got cut off of it, so now that it's actually leaning backward. This one is pretty good, I think. Let's see. Yeah, it's not too bad. I usually make one myself while the children are making theirs, so that I can be at the same stage that they're at. stay one step ahead of them so I can use mine to show them instead of always, working on their project. I can use mine as the demonstration. So I keep these around, but you can see that this has got little, if you look really closely, that eventually over time it'll get little scratches on it, little nicks. Okay, there's a big one. And those will show up whenever you oil it. You could always resand it. Even though this was probably completed a year ago, I could resand it right now and get all those scratches off and it'd be fine. But then again, it's not too bad just like it is. So this poplar, even though this tree died probably 20 years ago, the wood continued to be beautiful and used for years after that. And even today, 20 years later, here I am with a piece of this tree that grew in my yard in my hand, showing you how you too can teach woodworking, and you'll learn so much depending on the type of wood that you use, how many times you make these things. So the human being, first project I usually do with the 4th grade, from start to finish. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.